Do you ever have that thought that pops into your head and all of a sudden your mind starts spinning and going, and before you know it, you've gone down this rabbit hole and you don't want to be going down, and you're like, God, what's happening in my head? It happens to all of us. And in this video, I want to talk to you about what's actually going on in your head, the thoughts, the spiraling, and how God can help you through this and what His Word says on what we need to do in those moments. So if you like faith tips and renewing your mind, this is what this channel is all about. So if you want to go ahead and subscribe right now, go ahead. So let's talk about something. Imagine you're outside walking. It's a beautiful day and a bird flies over your head and drops one tiny twig on the top of your head. I actually have a twig right here to give you the clear picture. So suddenly this bird flies over and just does this, and there's this twig on your head, and the twig represents a fearful thought, a worry, a concern, and you don't reach up and remove the twig off your head because it doesn't really bother you, so you just let it stay there. And then the next day a bird flies by and drops another twig. I don't have any more twigs, so you got to imagine more twigs. And so a second twig is on your head and you start to think, oh my gosh, there's twigs on my head. And I wonder what they look like. I wonder how big they are. I wonder what color they are. Are they straight? Are they curvy? And you start to think about the twigs on your head, but you're not doing this. You're not removing it. You're just letting it be because it's not really a big deal. It doesn't bother you that much. And so the next day the bird drops another twig, and then the next day another twig and another twig. And before you know it, you have an entire nest on your head. And the problem is this nest goes with you everywhere you go. When you wake up, the nest is with you. When you're making your coffee, the nest is with you. When you go to your job, there's the nest. When you're having conversations with your husband or your spouse or your kids, there's the nest. When you're paying bills, when you're trying to sleep at night, there's the nest. And eventually, instead of just having one fearful thought, you have an entire nest living on your head of fear and uncertainty. And it's with you everywhere you go. And what happens is you start speaking more fear than faith. You start to make decisions out of panic because you got to make a decision fast because you feel pressure, instead of talking to God, consulting God first. Or your conversations are going south fast because you're so reactive, because you've got this fear of nest on your head and you're just panicking and you're reactive. And it all starts with this one little twig, this one fearful thought. It's where it starts. And this is the reason I think that 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5 is so powerful. And I have my Bible right here. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5, it says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. We take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. And I want to clarify something. God isn't telling us that we have to obsessively monitor every single random thought that pops into our mind. That's not what God is saying in this verse. The verse is saying arguments and things that set themselves up against the knowledge of God, against what God says. So in other words, thoughts that are contradictory to what God says. So you can say, I don't have to give that thought another minute of my time. I have to give that thought permission to stay in my head. And I have a free guide in my bio that can walk you through these steps of not taking the thought in your head and taking it captive. My free guide can walk you through that if you want to check that out. So let me give you some real life examples of this in action. So maybe you've received a really difficult medical diagnosis. Now, the diagnosis is a fact. Taking thoughts captive, it doesn't mean that you pretend the diagnosis doesn't exist, but fear will add to the diagnosis. For example, the diagnosis is this, therefore, my life is over. My diagnosis is this, therefore, I'm never going to be strong again. So fear, taking the fearful thought, adds to something that is a fact. And you can say, wait a minute, whoa, wait a minute, those are not facts. Fear is starting to write a story about my future. And that's when you lift your hand up and you say, I'm removing this twig. I'm removing this twig. And you say, I know what the doctor said. I know what the diagnosis said. I am going to make wise decisions. I'm going to take care of my body because God gave me a smart brain. But I'm not spending another minute worrying about the what ifs or worrying everything that could go wrong. I'm trusting God. That's taking a thought captive. Another example would be a relationship with someone like your spouse or a child, and there's a struggle there. It's a struggle. Fear says they're never going to change. They're never going to change. And that's when you say, no, I'm removing this twig off my head. I'm removing the twig. I don't know how this story ends, but I'm going to continue loving them. I'm going to continue praying for them. And I'm trusting God that they're going to work in this person's life. That is taking the thought captive. So here's something that I really want you to hear. Having a fearful thought or, having a worry pop into your head, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. Birds are going to fly over your head all day long. Twigs are going to be dropping on your head all day long. Thoughts will pop into your head all day long. The question is, what are you doing with the thought? Are you going to build a home for all of these little twigs? You might not be able to control every thought that pops into your mind, but you can become more intentional about, are you entertaining these twigs? Are you like, oh, how big is the twig? What size is the twig? What color is the twig? Or are you saying, no, I'm not. I'm not going to spend 1 minute of my time entertaining these twigs anymore. So here is something very simple that you can practice this week. When your mind is spiraling, stop and ask yourself, what is actually true? What am I adding to this that's not true? What does God say about this? And then you can say, God is with me. God will never leave me. I'm trusting God in this situation. God's going to give me wisdom. And that is how you remove the twigs one at a time. One at a time. So you might be thinking, okay, Michelle, I get what you're saying, but I don't have just one twig on my head. I've got an entire nest that has been built and has been traveling with me day in and day out for weeks and months and years of my life. It's okay. Just start with the very next thought that pops into your head. You don't have to figure everything out today. You don't have to have it all planned and figured it out. Just start with the next thought that pops into your head and just be aware. Just be aware. What am I thinking? What am I thinking? Am I thinking about this twig? Or am I removing it? Or am I saying, no, I'm not going down that road? And I want you to imagine you doing this after a couple of days. How are you going to feel? How is it going to feel? Imagine if you started to quickly remove these twigs. Imagine what the conversation with your husband the next time. Imagine the conversation with a coworker the next time you talk to them. Imagine the next time you go to pay your bills. Or imagine the next time that you go to work out. Your thought process slowly starts to change. Something that was huge in my life was sleep. I don't know if you've watched my other videos, but I used to have night terrors, cry myself to sleep, woke up the next day completely exhausted because I wasn't getting restful sleep. The enemy attacked my mind and spiraled out of control. And if you don't get good sleep, you know how that feels the next day. You feel like a zombie and you are snappy. You're making decisions quick on the fly. You're operating out of fear and not faith. And for a lot of years, I lived like that. And it's so hard to walk by faith and have a strong faith, being at peace and being joyful and at rest when you are a zombie during the day and when you can't sleep at night. Sleep is huge. So that is just right there for myself, something that has completely changed my life, So let's wrap this up. The next time the bird plops the twig on your head, I want you to picture yourself doing this. That's what I want you to picturing it and saying, not today. There's no nest being built in my hair today. So if you want more tips like this, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and like this video, and that way you can get the notification when I upload more videos. And I also created that free guide, Stop the Mental Spiral Fast. I have a copy of it right here. So this is the free guide. It's just very simple. It's a tool to help you interrupt the spiral and just redirect your thoughts. It's a couple of pages long. It gives you scripture verses that you can say out loud. And I just want you to remember, there's no nest. No nest today. I'm removing the twig. I'm replacing it with God's truth. And I am going to move forward trusting God. I'll see you in the next video.